A camera has recently caught Bigfoot falling from the sky. The two men who filmed it have undeniable proof that the Sasquatch can come from above you at any time. But that's only the beginning, because a groundbreaking discovery the men made while recording will forever impact how you think Bigfoot can arrive to our planet. My name is Frank, and the two men in this footage worked for me. I run a small outfit that keeps snowpack and weather stations running for the Forest Service, and that ridge station was one of mine. Nathan was my most reliable hand, years on the job. Christian was a kid barely into his first season. I sent the two of them up for a routine overnight to swap a set of failing sensors, and neither one ever came back down the mountain. What they left behind was 9 camera angles of the worst night I have ever had to sit through. My station's own units and their 2 phones, and I have gone through every second of it more times than is healthy, because every second of it has Bigfoot somewhere in it, and because I am the one who sent them up there. Fixed camera 2 is where it starts, and it starts wrong. The timestamp reads 5:51 in the evening, the light already going, the storm ceiling already sagging low over the ridge, heavy wet snow coming down in a curtain that kills sound and eats distance. For 11 minutes, there is nothing on it but falling snow and 2 headlamps bobbing around the shed. Then, between one frame and the very next one, a 30th of a second, Bigfoot is standing out in the open 30 feet from the tree line, dead center in the shot, facing the station. There is no walk-in. There is no shape sliding out of the dark. One frame is empty snow, and the next frame is 9 feet of matted dark fur standing in the middle of it like it had been there the whole time. I sat on that one cut for a long while because nothing that size just appears out of nowhere. And yet that is exactly what Bigfoot does on this footage, and the snow around its feet told a story I could not make sense of until the very last file forced me to. I know how that sounds, and the first thing anyone assumes is a dropped frame or a splice. So I walked the raw file frame by frame, and nothing is missing. The counter runs clean straight through the moment Bigfoot shows up, which means it did not step into a gap in the recording. It entered the shot standing still and fully formed. And then there is the snow. A shallow ring of thrown powder circles Bigfoot's feet, a blast pattern 8 feet across, pushed out in every direction like something came down hard in the center of it. Remember that detail, because Bigfoot arrived standing in a small crater it made without ever taking a step to get there. Because here is the part that took the floor out from under me. I checked every other camera for the approach, and there is no approach. Fixed 1 and Fixed 3 cover the flanks of that same clearing with overlapping views, and neither one ever catches Bigfoot crossing into frame. The shed security camera has an unbroken half hour of that tree line with fresh snow piling up clean on it. No tracks, no trail, nothing punched through the powder anywhere along the tree edge. Something that size crossing open ground leaves a trench you could spot from a helicopter. There is no trench anywhere. There is only that one impossible ring of thrown snow with Bigfoot standing in the middle of it. If it did not walk in, and it did not come from the trees, then the only direction left is the one nobody ever thinks to check. And there happens to be a camera pointed in exactly that direction. While watching all of the footage, I made a lot more discoveries about Bigfoot I never thought I would make. Shocking findings that can't be shared on YouTube. That's why I wrote it all out for you, so you can uncover the actual truth. You can find it at the link in the description. Now let's dive back in. There is one more thing from that first stretch that I skipped past on 3 separate viewings, and I am still angry with myself about it, because the whole answer was sitting right there in a data log the entire time. That upward sky camera keeps a plain text record of the cloud ceiling, a boring column of numbers that nobody is ever meant to actually read. At 5:51 in the evening, the exact second Bigfoot appears in that ring of snow, the log records a sudden ceiling obstruction, something large passing between the camera and the clouds for a little under 2 seconds before the reading clears again. I saw it. I even flagged it. And then I did what all of us do. I decided it was a clump of wet snow sliding off the lens hood, because the other option did not fit anything I was willing to believe yet. Bigfoot had told me how it got up on that ridge inside the first 60 seconds, in writing, and I looked right at it and talked myself out of it. Christian noticed the thing in the clearing before Nathan did. You can watch it happen on Christian's helmet camera, the beam of his light snapping up off the sensor he is working on and locking onto the middle distance, and then his breathing goes shallow and fast, the mic catching every pull. He does not say the word yet. He just goes rigid, the way your whole body locks up when the animal part of your brain understands a threat before the thinking part has caught up. Then he taps Nathan, and Nathan turns, and for a second, both headlamps are pinned on Bigfoot standing at the edge of the clearing. Nathan breathes out something low and disbelieving under his breath, not a shout, just the sound a man makes when the world he trusted quietly stops being true. Bigfoot never moves a muscle through any of it. It just lets them look. What Christian does next tells me these two were not fools, whatever happened after. He does not bolt, and he does not raise his voice. He keys the handheld radio and calls the trailhead relay in a flat, careful whisper, reporting a large animal on site and asking them to stay on the channel. The relay never answers. Not static, not a busy tone, just a dead channel where a working one had been an hour before. When Nathan grabs the sat phone off his pack, it will not lock on either, the little icon just spinning against a sky that Bigfoot had apparently already sealed over their heads. That is the moment this stops being a wildlife sighting and turns into something with a door quietly locking behind it, because Bigfoot had not come up there to be seen. It had come to make sure nobody else would. The two men did the only sensible thing and started backing toward the shed, the one solid structure on that ridge, steel-sided, with a real door and a real bolt. And this is the first place Bigfoot showed me it understood exactly what they were doing. On Fix 2, you can watch it play out. As Nathan and Christian angle toward that door, Bigfoot drifts, not charges, on a line that keeps cutting their distance to the shed shorter than theirs, closing the angle a few feet at a time, never once looking like it is chasing anything. It was steering them, herding them off the door and out toward the open downhill slope, and both men were so locked onto its face that neither of them clocked the geometry of their own feet until Christian stopped dead and told Nathan very quietly that it was not going to let them reach the door. They got there anyway, barely, because Nathan did the brave, stupid thing and threw his headlamp underhand off to the left. Bigfoot's head snapped after the tumbling light, a fast, hungry twist of attention, and in the 3 seconds that bought them both, men crossed the last 20 feet and hauled the steel door shut and threw the bolt. You can hear that bolt slam home on the shed's internal mic. You can hear both of them panting in the dark. And then for a long moment, you can hear nothing at all outside, which is somehow the worst sound of the whole night, because a Bigfoot that is roaring and pounding the walls is at least a Bigfoot you can locate. Silence meant it was thinking, and the next thing that shed camera picked up proved Bigfoot had been thinking about something none of us would ever have guessed. The shed camera is a cheap fixed unit up in the corner, fisheye lens, the whole interior washed in grainy infrared. For 4 minutes, it shows two men getting their breathing under control and taking stock, Nathan working the dead sat phone, Christian with his back against the door, both of them flinching at every tick of the cooling metal. Then a sound comes through the wall, not a pound and not a claw, a voice. The relay operator's voice, the same trailhead contact Christian had tried to raise, calling his name through the steel, telling him the channel is back up and asking for his position. Christian lunges for the radio before his brain catches up with him, and it is Nathan who grabs his wrist, because Nathan has already understood what I understood watching it back. The radio in Christian's hand was still dead, the screen still black, and the voice coming through that wall was not coming out of any radio at all. Bigfoot was standing on the other side of the door doing the operator's voice, pitch for pitch, and it had learned the man's name off the one whispered radio call it forced Christian to make out in the open 20 minutes before. And while I was pulling that part apart, I went back to the one feed I had ignored all night. The sky camera and its ceiling log put a cold weight in my chest. It flickered a second time while the two men were locking themselves into that shed, another large, something crossing between the lens and the cloud, and then gone. Over the exact minutes, Bigfoot was at their door in the operator's voice. Which means the thing at the door was not the only thing on that ridge by then, and the steel box those two were so relieved to bolt may have been the worst place they could have run. Everyone has heard the old stories about Bigfoot mimicking a human voice, and it never stops being the thing people refuse to believe until they hear it for themselves. But watch these two faces in the infrared when they realize the voice is a lie, and tell me that is an animal repeating a sound it likes. This was aimed. Bigfoot had listened to one transmission, picked the single piece most likely to make a scared man open a locked door, a familiar voice offering rescue, and played it back through the only barrier between it and them. And then Bigfoot did something with that voice that I think is the cruelest single thing on the whole recording, worse than anything its hands did later. The operator's voice stopped, and after a beat it came back, except now it was not the operator. It was Christian's own voice, coming through the wall, calling Nathan's name in Christian's exact tired cadence, telling him it was safe to come out now. Except Christian was standing right there with his mouth shut, staring at the door his own voice was leaking out of. On the infrared, you can catch the exact moment the kid understands that Bigfoot has taken the sound of him, that whatever walks out of those woods wearing his voice will be able to call his partner into the dark long after Christian himself is gone. That is not mimicry to bag a meal. That is Bigfoot, building a tool it means to keep, and it built that tool out of a living man standing 10 feet away from it. The shed is rated for weather, not for a 500-pound animal that has decided it wants inside. When the stolen voice finally went quiet, something much heavier settled against the outside wall with a long groan of stressed metal, and Bigfoot moved on from tricks to force. The first real hit bowed the door inward against the bolt, a single dished dent, blooming in the steel with a bang that spikes the audio into distortion, and both men threw themselves against the far wall. The second hit did the same to the side panel. Then Bigfoot stopped hitting the walls, and on the shed camera, you can see why. Because a shadow crossed the little vent slot high on the back wall. Bigfoot had circled to the one point of that structure never built to keep anything out, the roof vent, and a long dark arm was already working its fingers through the louvers, peeling galvanized steel back like the lid off a can. And here is the thing the shed camera never explains. It shows the shadow cross the wall, and then it shows the whole roof take Bigfoot's weight, the joists flexing and dust shaking down inside. But it never once shows Bigfoot climb. No scrabble up the siding, no hand hooking the eave, nothing. 1 second Bigfoot is on the ground at the door, the next, its full weight is on the roof above their heads, the exact same way it had turned up in that clearing with no tracks leading in. That was the moment the question started following me around every time I opened this footage. How does Bigfoot keep getting above everything without ever once climbing to get there? The arm came in farther than the vent should ever have allowed, shoulder deep, and on the shed camera, you can watch Bigfoot's hand open and close in the dark air above the two men's heads, sweeping slow arcs through the space, patient and blind and searching. Nathan pressed himself flat to the floor to stay under it. It was not flailing. It was feeling for them, working the space over methodically, the way you reach into a dark drawer for something you already know is in there, and every pass of those fingers dropped an inch or two lower as Bigfoot read the size of the box by touch. Christian made the call then that probably kept this footage alive at all. He told Nathan they could not defend a box, that the box was a trap, and that their only move was to get out and get downhill toward the trucks while Bigfoot was busy tearing the roof open. So they unbolted the door they had fought so hard to lock, and they ran back out into the snow, straight into the open, which is exactly where Bigfoot had wanted them the entire time. The helmet camera catches something in those first seconds outside that I did not register as important until I already knew how the night ended, and now I cannot unsee it. As Christian clears the doorway, his beam sweeps up across the sky out of reflex, the way you check the weather, and for half a second, the light catches the underside of the cloud ceiling pressing down over the ridge, low and gray and churning, much lower than it had been an hour before. There is nothing in the frame, but Christian holds the beam up there a beat too long, and on the audio you can hear him breathe one word to Nathan, not a sentence, just telling his partner that it feels like something is up there. Then he drops the light and they run, and Bigfoot came off the shed roof behind them, and neither man ever looked up again, which is the one thing that might have changed how this ended. Out on the fixed cameras now, and the storm has picked up, the powder coming sideways, both headlamps jerking as the two men half run and half fall down toward the drainage that leads back to the trailhead. For a few seconds, it almost looks like they are going to make it, and that is the cruelest stretch of the whole thing, because Fixed 3 catches the exact moment Bigfoot comes off the shed roof to follow. It does not climb down, it steps off the roof of a 12-foot structure into a 9-foot drop, and it lands in a low crouch in the snow without the stagger or the heavy double thud that much falling weight should make. It lands soft, absorbed, controlled. The way something lands when falling is not an accident, but a method it has practiced its whole life. And it did not simply chase them down that slope, which is the part that told me Bigfoot already knew how this ended. On Fixed 3, right at the edge of frame, you can see the first rock come out of the dark. not thrown at the men, but thrown ahead of them and off to the left, cracking off a boulder in a burst of snow that turns both headlamps hard to the right, away from the shallower open ground and toward the tightening drainage. A second rock lands a few seconds later, then a third, each one coming down not where the men are, but where they might have veered, sealing off every gentle line down the mountain and leaving open only the one steep chute that funnels toward the rocks. The spacing reads on the timestamps as almost metronomic, a strike every few seconds. Bigfoot driving two exhausted people down a corridor it had already picked out for them. Neither man understood he was being steered. They only knew they were being driven, and they ran exactly where Bigfoot wanted them to go. Halfway down the slope, the chase changed in a way I cannot square with anything running down prey. On fix 3, Bigfoot drops out of the bottom of the frame and is gone, a few seconds of the two men stumbling alone. Then something comes straight down into the trees ahead of them. Not on the arc a thrown rock travels, but a dead vertical drop, a snapped length of pine trunk slamming down a body length in front of Nathan and throwing snow in both their faces. Christian is screaming that it got in front of them, and neither man understands how, because nothing crossed the open ground in between. Bigfoot did not run ahead of them. It came down ahead of them, and I do not think it was trying to hit them yet, only ranging the drop for the bottom of the mountain. Whatever Bigfoot took from that ranging drop, it put to use inside a minute. On fix 3, you can watch it come down a second time, and this time it does not land ahead of them. It lands on them. It drops straight onto Nathan out of the top of the frame, one hand closing around the top of his pack, and then it lifts him. A grown man in full winter gear hauled one-handed straight up off the snow and held there a beat, boots kicking at nothing, while Bigfoot just looked at him. Then it threw him, a good 15 feet down the slope, into a stand of young pines that folded flat under his weight. He should not have gotten up from that, and the sickening part is that Bigfoot let him, set him loose again, broken and slow, and pointed downhill, and stood there watching Christian haul him back onto his feet. It was not trying to kill them yet. It was moving them the same way it had moved them off the shed door, and it wanted them alive a little longer for whatever was waiting at the bottom. And it did not move down that hill the way anything with weight should. On the fixed cameras, Bigfoot covers ground in long, low bounds, and at the bottom of each one there is a beat too long where it is simply not touching anything, hanging in the falling snow before it comes down soft again. Frame by frame, it spends more of that descent in the air than on the ground. Whatever Bigfoot's relationship to gravity is, it is not ours, and every clue the cameras kept feeding me pointed at a sky I still had not thought to look at. Christian went down first, and it was not a tackle. On the helmet camera, you can see his own beam swinging wild across snow and trunks as he sprints, and then the beam just drops, the horizon tipping up and sideways, and the last clear thing the lens catches before it packs with snow is a shadow crossing over him from above, blotting out the gray sky for an instant, like something passed between him and the clouds. He is not knocked down from behind. He is driven straight down into the snow from over the top, hard enough that the mic clips on the impact. The lens ends up half buried and turned sideways, still recording, and for the next half minute it catches the worst of the whole drive in pieces. A hand the size of a shovel blade comes down across Christian's back and pins him flat. The first wet crack is his leg, folded the wrong way at the knee until it stops being a knee at all. The second is higher, a stuttered run of them across his chest, ribs going one after another like kindling snapped by the armful. Christian is screaming through all of it, a sound a grown man is not built to make, and Bigfoot is in no hurry with any part of it, working him over slow and deliberate, the same patience it had shown at the shed door. When the screaming stops, it does not fade, it cuts. And what comes through the mic after is worse, the wet and unhurried sound of Bigfoot pulling the kid apart in the snow and then dragging what was left off toward the trees. That should have been the last of Christian on this footage. It was not. And then the trees did the thing I had been dreading since the shed. Christian's voice came out of the dark, not from the spot where Christian actually lay, but from off to Nathan's right, 30 feet back into the timber, clear and calm, and calling Nathan by name, telling him he was fine, telling him to come and help. On the phone audio, you can hear Nathan stop dead. You can hear his breath catch, hear him start to turn back toward it, because it was his partner down to the exact crack in his voice, the same voice Bigfoot had reached through a steel wall and stolen an hour before, and kept for exactly this. Whatever was calling him out of those trees was already wearing Christian, and it was using him like bait to walk Nathan back up the slope into the dark. Nathan did not go. He jammed his hands over his own ears and ran the other way, downhill, sobbing, and behind him, Christian's stolen voice kept calling after him with a patience that was so much worse than any scream, following him from tree to tree the whole way down. Nathan kept running, and I do not blame him, because there was nothing he could have done, and because his phone footage is the only reason this story has an ending at all. He was on open ground now with nothing over him but that low, closed sky, and I still was not ready for what Bigfoot let that phone record before the night was over. Nathan made it another 200 yards down the drainage before the terrain funneled him into a narrow chute between two rock walls, exactly the kind of pinch a person ends up in when something smarter than him has spent the whole night deciding where he should go. His phone is up and recording now, held out ahead of him, the flashlight bouncing off wet stone, his own voice low and steady and praying. And that is when he stops, because standing in the chute ahead of him, blocking the only way down, is Bigfoot, already there, already waiting, somehow across from the spot where it pinned Christian to a point 200 yards farther downhill without ever passing Nathan on the open slope in between. You can hear Nathan stop dead on the phone audio, boots skidding in the wet gravel, and then a few seconds where he does the math every trapped person does. The rock walls on both sides are sheer and slick and higher than a man can jump. Behind him is the slope he just came down, and somewhere up it is whatever finished with Christian. In front of him is Bigfoot, filling the only gap, not rushing, taking one slow step and then another, letting the walls close the space so it never has to hurry. Nathan backs up until his shoulders hit stone, and you can hear him say one thing to himself, low, that there is no way out of this. He is right. Bigfoot had built this ending 20 minutes and 200 yards ago, and Nathan had run the whole length of it thinking he was escaping. 200 yards in under 40 seconds across steep broken snow, and Bigfoot was already standing in that chute ahead of Nathan when the math says it could not possibly have beaten him there on foot. It never crosses a single one of the fixed cameras heading down. The recovery photos show Nathan's churned trail down the middle of the drainage and not one print beside it. It did not run past him, and it did not flank him. It simply was not on the slope, and then it was at the bottom, the same way it had turned up in that clearing with no tracks and stepped off that roof without a sound. Every single time Bigfoot needed to be somewhere, it got there from above, and Nathan's phone was pointed at the last piece of proof I needed. This is the moment everything on that drive was building toward, the moment the whole impossible thing stops being something I have to convince you of and becomes something the camera simply shows you. And I have lined it up frame for frame against the fixed sky camera to be certain the phone was not lying to me. As Bigfoot took its first slow step toward him in that chute, Nathan tilted the phone up toward the strip of open sky above the rock walls, out of the same instinct that makes any cornered animal look for the one way out it has not tried yet. And what came down through that strip of sky is the reason this footage exists at all. High in the gap between the two rock walls, a shape peeled loose from the underside of the cloud. It didn't fall. Falling is a thing that happens to you, and nothing about this was happening to it. Bigfoot came down, slow at the very top, and then gathering speed, both arms drawn in tight against its sides, 9 feet of it stretched out against the pale stormlight with its dark fur streaming flat in the wind of its own descent. And at the last possible second, its legs swung down and folded underneath it to take a landing it had plainly made 1,000 times before. A second Bigfoot dropping out of the open sky into that chute like a diver stepping off a board. And it was not alone up there. Higher still, back in the cloud where the phone light gave out into gray, I counted at least 2 more dark shapes coming down through the overcast behind it, one after another, lowering onto that ridge in a slow and orderly procession, as if the storm itself were setting them down, one at a time. The upward sky camera caught the same thing from its own angle at the same timestamp. A cluster of shapes resolving out of the cloud ceiling it was built to measure, and the two feeds together leave nothing to argue about. They did not come down all at once. You can count them separating out of the overcast one at a time, spaced a few seconds apart, each holding that same tucked shape, the trailing ones adjusting to land clear of the ones already down, spacing themselves, taking turns, coming down in an ordered line the way jumpers leave an aircraft, not the way anything falls by accident. Bigfoot was not living on that mountain. Bigfoot was arriving on it, out of the sky, in numbers, and Nathan had run into the middle of the landing. The second one hit the snow of the chute in that same soft crouch, 6 feet in front of him, and Nathan's phone finally caught the thing every one of us has argued about for a decade, a full, close, motionless look at Bigfoot from the ground up. 9.5 feet of it unfolding to its full height in the dark, shoulders that filled the whole gap between the two rock walls, a chest crossed with the pale seams of old scars, forearms thicker through than a man's waist, and a face that turned down toward Nathan with none of the wildness you would want it to have, and every bit of the patient. Measuring calm, you would not. There is no blur to it, no motion smear, no distance, no snow in the way, no room left to call it a bear or a shadow or a hoax. It is Bigfoot, filling the frame, close enough that you can see meltwater beating on its fur, and it is staring directly into the lens like it had known the whole time the camera was there. Nathan does not scream. On the audio, he just lets out one long, tired breath, the sound of a man who has run all the way to the end of the thing that was always going to catch him. The first Bigfoot closed in from behind him. This one stepped in from the front. The phone slipped out of his hand and landed lens up in the snow, still recording, and the last thing it ever caught was that strip of open sky above the walls, where two more dark shapes were still coming down through the cloud, slow and silent and certain, before a foot the size of a manhole cover came down over the glass and the picture went black. That is the last frame on the drive, and it is the clearest proof anyone has ever recorded of the one thing about Bigfoot we were never meant to find out. It does not come up out of the forest. It comes down out of the sky. It comes down in numbers, and by the time my two men understood that, it was already standing on the ground with them.